Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LateNighter Roundtable here on the LateNighter Podcast Network. My name is Jon Schneider, and so excited to be with you this month to talk about all of the biggest stories in late night for November 2025. And joining us once again is the host of the Inside Late Night with Mark Malkoff podcast. Mark Malkoff is here. Mark, how are you?
Great. Nice to see you, John. Nice to see you, Bill.
Happy to have you back, Mark, and great to have the editor at large of LateNighter here, Bill Carter. Bill, how are you?
Excellent, and happy to be back with you guys. Always have a stimulating chat with you fellas.
Yeah, it should be fun. This is the second month we're doing this, so we love all the feedback and would love to know what you think, or are there any stories during the month you want us to talk about in late night. So let's dive right into our biggest story of November, which I think is the Daily Show 2026 renewals. I think that is a fascinating conversation where they're going to continue down this path of having Jon Stewart on Mondays and then a rotating guest host throughout the months of 2026. So, Bill, did you break the news on this for the Daily Show renewals?
Yeah, I did, yeah. They promised me, they said, well, you can do it, and then we'll release it, 20 minutes later. But then they decided to send out a notice, of embargo. So I was like, I got to write it now. This is crazy.
All right, well, we're going to go into our fourth season. Well, so it will be the third season of Jon Stewart and the news team, the fourth season with rotating guest hosts. Bill, do you feel like this format is working for you?
Well, I mean, would I think it would be better if Jon Stewart hosted every night? Yeah, I think that would be better. But I think the other people are talented. I think they're not equally talented. I would say that's an interesting question for them going forward, to keep the rotation. Now, with Johnson, has how many people? 5 people?
I think so. I mean, you got Josh Johnson, Desi Leidick, Costa. Trying to think. Oh,
Jordan
and Jordan Clever.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So you don't get the same connection with the host that you do with somebody who's there more regularly. I think that's a factor. And I wonder if they'll change that going forward. I don't know. I would imagine they also assess who does best, whose ratings are better, things like that. I think they're all talented. I think it's interesting that what they generally do with the other hosts is do headline. Like they come on and say, let's look what's in the headline. It's almost like Seth Meyers beginning of his show. You know what I mean? Like, let's look at the headline. That's whereas Jon is doing a essay like every week. But I think, it's amusing. It keeps my attention. They often do very funny. I mean, they're very funny writers. So I mean, the show still has strong appeal, I think.
I think so too. I think what's interesting, I mean, you have Troy Iwata, Grace Schmidt as well there as correspondents. Like, there's a lot of personalities on the show, Mark. It almost feels like a cast, like you could look at it like an SNL cast that they have there, where like many nights, if like Ronnie Chang is hosting, like Desi Leidick might play the role of correspondent. It's not like there's just one person there that's taking over the show the way that Stewart does on Mondays. Do you feel like this format works for you?
I do. I think it's really a great thing. I do echo what Bill is saying, because it is that thing when Jon Stewart took over the Daily Show. It took a while for him doing the show to get that rhythm, and anybody that's new needs that time to really figure out their voice and maybe make changes organically here and there. But I think it works. I'm so glad it was renewed. I think it might have been a PR disaster if they yanked it. I'm just glad everything worked out. But I think that there's the one thing I will say is the talent is so strong at the Daily Show. I would not be surprised if the same thing would happen to Michael Che, is that he was only there for a little bit and he had a better opportunity and career-wise and the go for it. So I don't know how long some of those people will be with the Daily Show. I mean, I hope that they stay. But it's definitely, I mean, Jon Stewart, it's clear he is the guy, and still people consider him the face of the show. So we'll see. But I think that they're doing a fantastic job.
I think the addition of Josh Johnson is really interesting because he has such a strong following on social media that you would think he's going to have a leg up if he can pull those people in. And I think he's good. I mean, he's a very good stand-up, but I think he's done well as a host in the brief number of times he's done it. So I think that could be an interesting thing to watch. A lot of people think that comics are not really as ambitious about late night as they used to be, and probably with good reason. The shows are shrinking, number of shows are shrinking, and veteran hosts. I mean, there's not going to be one on CBS for God's sake, but you know, you can have a career now without being a late night or getting a sitcom. You can be I think Josh Johnson could be a big stand-up going around the country.
There's more money in playing arenas than doing
Exactly.
late night. I mean,
Exactly.
it's economics.
Exactly. So, and I don't think necessarily the other people are a stand. Jordan Klepper, I don't think is a stand-up. He's a great sketch guy, more or less. But I think so. That's an interesting factor, whether or not, and whether the big question for me was, what if Jon had said, I want the show to continue, and I'll still be executive producer, but I'm not going to host anymore. Would they go forward? I don't know. I mean, his being there now is a very strong appeal, and it keeps the format going. Here's an interesting thing, though. So I talked to Tom Freston, right, and who was the head of MTV Networks, et cetera, and I asked him a question that I've been asking myself for a long time, which is if the new regime, which disposed of Colbert, decided to dispose of The Daily Show because they didn't like its politics or whatever, couldn't The Daily Show now exist as a brand on its own for someone else to take? And he agreed with me. I mean, why not? The fact that it's on Comedy Central is sort of just marginally interesting because they don't have anything but South Park and The Daily Show. That's really all they have. So, I mean, Comedy Central could just have said, well, we don't exist anymore, but South Park will be on one of our other properties.
Paramount Plus.
Yeah, Paramount Plus. Yeah, exactly.
And that would fit because the fact that it is on Comedy Central allows them to go a little bit further with their comedy than what the other network shows can do. We see swearing, more raunchy jokes, like things like that.
Absolutely. And so that would be a factor. But I think that if they decided, I've always felt this way about Saturday Night Live. I mean, if NBC, and there's no reason for them to do this, if they ever said, it's too expensive, we don't want to do it, I can't imagine Netflix or somebody wouldn't say, it's freaking Saturday Night Live. We'll put it on. What, you crazy? And I feel that sort of that same way about The Daily Show. It's not the same as the other late night shows, which are basically the same format with the host, etc. The Daily Show is doing, satirical news, which is a different thing. So I would think that it has a future no matter what.
Yeah, to your point about Saturday Night Live, I definitely see, some sort of Netflix involvement down the road. At least, I'm seeing them already starting to pull ESPN personalities over there for their live sports content. We'll see what they do for the future of comedy over at Netflix, but that's a conversation for another time. My last question, Mark, about The Daily Show. I mean, you just spoke to Roy Wood Jr. on Inside Late Night, and I thought you had a fascinating conversation with him about what it was like to leave The Daily Show, why he left, what opportunities were available to him. And, as Bill said, there, may be some benefit for these hosts who don't have to be committed to being there every week and then can go out and make more money on tour. Do you think that this could be more issues down the road for them with this format and their personalities, or do you feel like this is the right fit at the right time?
It's hard to say. I mean, Roy Wood was very, very clear that he didn't feel like there was going to be a step up at The Daily Show, and it was time for him to go after all those years. Now he has his own show on CNN, is doing great on tour. I think every anchor just really has to assess where they are, where they want to be, and if they are going to be having to fight for airtime. I mean, it's like SNL and The Daily Show. It's a little bit easier with The Daily Show maybe to get airtime. But it's not easy, and sometimes there's other career temptations out there. I mean, it was just so clear with Roy Wood Jr. that it was time to go, and he made a really good decision, I think.
He did. Yeah. So I'd like to note that the interesting thing about The Daily Show that's changed is that they always had this cast, but they were correspondents. They didn't get an anchor shot, and the correspondent part of that is really downplayed now. They don't really do as much with that as they used to. Jon will do an entire time without throwing to anybody. He does. So they have this choice. I mean, you won't be very prominent. You won't get as much airtime as a correspondent, but you'll get a week of hosting now and then, or 3 days anyway of hosting now and then, and that is great for your exposure. I go back to Johnson because I think Josh Johnson is on the cusp of a big career.
Oh, he's going to break out. I mean, he's going to be huge. I think he's going to be a household name. I really, really do.
Yes. So his decision is also quite interesting to follow. Would he stay if he thought I'm the real successor to Jon Stewart? That might be a factor.
I think that those jobs are less and less attractive when the dollar sign is there for less work. It's such a grind. I mean, The Daily Show is only 4 days a week, and it's a little less, but it's really hard to have other career aspirations. I mean, Jon Stewart had enough leverage at doing it for years where he could go and make a movie and direct something, but like, it takes over your life. I can't see him that would be something that he would want to do. I could be off on that. I think he'd be really good at it, but I'd be surprised if they offered it if he wanted it.
The money is a factor, but fame is a factor. I mean, there are a lot of stand-ups that make a lot of money going around the country. They're not that well known outside that circle. You know what I mean? But Jon Stewart is a national big figure because of The Daily Show. Yeah. I don't know if television is going to carry that much weight, but if you're on television 4 nights a week, you certainly have a big platform. So I don't know. I think it's a very interesting question, and obviously with Taylor Tomlinson, she answered that what she thought.
I think that if you're looking for maybe some insight into the future of The Daily Show, keep an eye out on Jon Stewart's Monday shows, where if he ever does throw to a correspondent, I think that maybe putting somebody there who is a host, one of the rotating hosts, on Jon Stewart's Monday show is a sign from the show itself that they're really trusting this person to put them out there on the biggest night of the week. So that's something I would watch for in 2026. But I do want to pivot over to the biggest story we talked about last month, which was all the Jimmy Kimmel, Trump stuff, everything that was happening. And then this month in November, you wrote a fascinating article, Bill, last week where you said, as Trump rages on, late night hosts find new openings. They feel more emboldened. And I think that what has happened over the last month with the coverage of the Epstein files, all the voting, everything post-government shutdown, has been these hosts of late night feeling like just more powerful than ever, that they could say what they need to say. I would love to know your perspective on what you've seen the last month from the late night hosts.
Yeah, I think the fact that Kimmel survived the attempt to remove him has only made it more clear that these guys feel emboldened to stand up for what they believe in. They have, Seth Meyers now has been attacked twice, and he comes back and he comments on it. It was interesting. Seth was sort of trying not to do that. I thought he was trying not to do that, and then he did it, and Trump went crazy, and he went crazy again. And I think, okay, Trump looks ineffectual in a way now. It's not working. It's only helping them. It doesn't hurt them.
It helps Seth, for sure. It helps Kimmel.
Yeah, I said he's feeding the hands that bite him. But that's what he's doing. And so for Kimmel, and this is another thing that Fresson said, I think he said, Kimmel is now the voice, the leading voice of the opposition, of the resistance. And it's fascinating. Kimmel comes out on a stage every night, and the people go crazy, way more over the top than they ever did before, because they're like, we don't believe in people taking something we like away. That doesn't sound like American to them. So I really think it's been to their advantage, and I do think it's interesting that because Trump was attacking the media at the same time, calling a woman a pig and all that stuff. Contemporaneously when he's attacking the late night people, and that's because those are two people he thinks threaten him. That's right. That's what he thinks. You can see that.
I think that the two hosts this month that had very fascinating months with regards to Trump and his coverage of late night are both Kimmel and Seth. And I think that with Kimmel, what he has been doing over the last couple of weeks is fascinating to me, because he's had guests like Eric Swalwell on to talk about running for governor of California. Yes. He had Mark Kelly on to talk about his response to Trump saying that, senators and Congress people should be hanged. So I think that he's in a way taking the position of what Colbert had in late night.
Exactly.
Like Colbert is going away. Kimmel's becoming the new Colbert in that sense. And that is fascinating to me.
He's never been more relevant. It has like a little bit of overtones on the Tonight Show when it was Conan was getting shoved out, and Conan, we were tuning in every night to see what Conan was going to say about NBC. And You kids, you can do anything you want unless Jay Leno wants it to, or whatever the joke was. But in terms of like a jolt of electricity to Kimmel's show, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's historic in a way that has happened before. I mean, Letterman did something outrageous, and he got, it would be like, we got to watch. No, he was in the middle of that kidnapping scandal, not kidnapping, blackmailing scandal. That's what late night sort of is, though. It's on every day. It's live every day. It's shot live every day. There's something about it that gives it momentum and makes you think, I want to see what's going on here. It's a matter of not only just being amused and entertained, but curious. Like, what's he going to say? Well, what are they going to do? What's the next move in this drama?
So, Mark, you were saying before briefly that you feel like all of Trump's comments on Seth were beneficial to him. And just to recap for anyone who was out of it, he on Truth Social, we had Trump talking about Seth. And then what we believe happened is that Trump, or someone in his circle watched a rerun of the same episode and commented like on a Saturday about a Friday show that was not live. And then Seth responded to that as well. And I thought that, his responses in A Closer Look and in his monologues, just, being like, you're going after me now, was so fascinating. Why do you feel like this is so beneficial for Seth Meyers?
It's the best advertising for his show for people to tune in. It makes him relevant that the president of the United States is talking about him, a comedian. It's interesting to look back that him and Seth at one point were okay. I mean, he was going to go on Seth's show, and Trump demanded, I guess, privately that supposedly that Seth apologize publicly for I guess the correspondence dinner, and Seth's like, absolutely not. So at one point they were okay. And it's just what it is. I mean, I think that probably privately, Alex Bays, Seth Meyers, and Shoemaker, whenever they get tweeted about or high-fiving each other, I mean, it's material, and it just proves the relevance, and it just gives them more ammunition, it seems, in terms of their material.
And just to remind the listeners, Trump has been on Fallon's show 3 times. He has been on Colbert twice and Kimmel 3 times. He's never been on Seth's show. Bill?
I saw Seth at the Brooklyn shows that Kimmel was doing, and just talked to him briefly about it. But I got a sense, especially talking from Shoemaker, his producer Mike Shoemaker, they're not totally comfortable being in the barrel. I mean, yeah, it gives them attention and all that, but the world is not, our country's not full of a lot of crazy people. There's a lot of stuff going on that's crazy. And I don't know that they want to be consistently in the barrel the way Kimmel is. I mean, Kimmel's inviting it now. He basically, the other night, he said, he checked, it was 12:49 when Trump tweeted about it. I was like, well, you watched our show. You're watching live. That's fantastic. We need more live viewers. That's fantastic. So he's encouraged. He's really encouraging it. If Trump tweets about him every night, he'd be happy. I think he'd feel great about it, because the real thing is Jimmy is combative. He's a combative guy. You know what I mean? That's in his nature. And I don't see that so much with Seth. Seth's kind of a more thoughtful guy. He's going to mix it up if he has to, but he's not encouraging it. I think now Jimmy kind of feels like basically it's his calling card now. This is who I am. I'm taking on the president, and I'm unafraid.
And I think Seth sort of handles it with, a little bit of passive aggressiveness, where he's looking at it and he's like, okay, let me take a step back. Let's talk about why this happened the way that it did. It's a very different approach than Kimmel, as you said, who just really goes right back at him. I mean, we've talked a long time about the future of late night and how, Fallon on NBC could be the last standing late night host at some point. But do we feel like this potentially extends the life of Seth's show, at least through the rest of the Trump administration? I believe his contract goes until 2028 anyways. But is this something that, like, he is the only one left in his time slot, Bill? Yeah. Do you feel like this could, potentially just give him a boost to move even further into the future?
Well, I think it doesn't hurt for sure. And, that franchise is the oldest franchise among any show that isn't the Tonight Show. I mean, that's the oldest existing franchise. And they've made a point of keeping it alive. So, I think I've talked to somebody in sales at NBC actually, connected to me, and I said, it must be, and they said, no, late night people still like that. They still like being in late night. It's a little bit more than just the ratings. There's, because there is attention to it. It's like, people watching TV, especially now, they're doing a million other things, but this kind of story going on like this makes you pay attention. And I think that helps. I do think that helps. So I do think they will keep the show. Plus, they are not so much under Trump's sway that they would cave to him necessarily the way the CBS people did. I think what really is the shocking story of the year to me is not necessarily that they canceled Colbert, but they dropped the whole franchise. That is just remarkable for a broadcast network that you would think has got to keep some element of dragging people into their network, that they walked away from the franchise. I find that just astonishing. But
yeah, truly. I think we'll be talking about that for a very long time. I want to pivot over to something a little bit more emotional this month, where we saw the very unfortunate passing of Cleto, the band leader for Cleto and the Cletones, the house band for Jimmy Kimmel Live. Been on the show since the inception back in 2003 until this year. And of course, when this happened, we got some canceled shows from Jimmy Kimmel Live. He came on to talk about the passing. He had his family in the audience. It was a very, very emotional couple of weeks there at Jimmy Kimmel Live, and still now, you have a sax there sitting with the rest of the band, and it's something that I don't think fans of Jimmy Kimmel Live and people watching and knowing Cleto will ever forget. So, I know you're both experts in late night TV, and you've seen these things happen before with late night personalities. How did you feel like the show handled the passing of Cleto and everything that you got to see the last couple of weeks, Bill?
Well, I also knew Cleto from being around the show a lot, and I knew those guys were amazingly close. I mean, Jimmy told the story. I mean, since I don't know, 9 years old or whatever it was, they were just running mates. So that was more than losing your colleague. It was losing your genuine, deep, lifelong friend. That is an extraordinary thing to have happen, especially because the guy was young. And but Jimmy wears his emotion on his sleeve. He does. He gets very emotional, and I guess some people don't like it, but I think it's genuine, and I think it's human.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Genuine. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of overtones of Jack Parr. I mean, they were transparent. What you saw is what you got. I thought that Jimmy did a beautiful job, and I've been over there to visit many times too. It's a warm environment. Not every late night show, we both know, is like that.
No.
And it starts at the top, and I thought he did a phenomenal job. This is a little bit just a creative note, but I mean, I really did enjoy I think Monday they were going to do an 80s week, and they had the Johnny Carson curtains, which I thought was really cool. And
cool.
Obviously this tragedy, I mean, there's nothing to celebrate other than just talk about what a beautiful human being he was. But yeah, I thought Kimmel handled it gracefully.
I would agree. I think that, if you go back and you watch that Monday show from 80s Week, it seems like they were set up for something really cool that hopefully they will go back to in the future.
Yeah.
That's something that I think that fans of the show really do enjoy, the nostalgia of getting to see things like that. But it made all the sense in the world to, shows.
They had great guests lined up for the week too. I mean, they really did. So it was too bad, but I mean, they had no choice. They couldn't go through with that. And I mean, Jimmy had trouble getting through that show. So, I mean, I don't think he could have played it. Let's go back to the 80s. I mean, I think that would have been out of step for him. So,
of course, and of course, we obviously feel exactly the same about his passing and our emotions towards everything. I thought it was just looking at this pragmatically, I thought it was so fascinating, just like in the context of Jimmy Kimmel's year, the fact that we did have back-to-back months of two very different situations, but Kimmel just really being raw and emotional on screen. And, I think that, he had a choice of whether he wanted to have that conversation with the audience, let everybody in to the relationship that he had with Cleto. And I thought that having that conversation with the audience, having the family there, it was just a wonderful moment, Bill.
But that's, again, I go back to, this is what late night has done throughout its history. I mean, I know Johnny addressed the death of his son. I mean, Letterman had to address all kinds of personal issues, and he just sat there straightforwardly talking, and you were like, this isn't some writer writing jokes for him. This is the guy. This is his life that we're sort of taking a part in. Letterman had everything happening: women breaking into his house, and getting traffic tickets, and all those things that he talked about. And Jimmy's like that. He's like, and he does have a show that's very family. I mean, Mark is right about the warmth of the show. He has so many family members there. It really feels like it's a family construction, and that is tremendously unusual. It's the farthest thing away from Larry Sanders as you can get.
Mark, I think it's one of the things that's most fascinating about late night nowadays is that, like, back when Carson was the, sort of only host of late night, you were able to feel like when you're watching the show, he's your friend, he's the one that's going to guide you through the evening. And now you have a lot of options to choose from. And I think if you become attached to a certain late night personality, you go through with them the ups and downs. And of course, people are not as attached to these late night personalities the way that they were maybe 10 or 20 years ago, but there still is something to say about, hey, we've watched Kimmel on air for 22 years. We've watched Cleto on air for 22 years.
Yeah, there's an emotional attachment, no doubt, to people when you're watching these people. You're going to sleep a lot of times if people are watching at 11:30 or 12:30 or whatever. And yeah, when Johnny Carson would talked about his son passing away in 1991, just people. Johnny had taken a month off, and Johnny had to address it. It was probably the hardest moment he's ever had to do on camera. There's been things like this. Johnny took on the National Enquirer in the early '80s and called them liars. This was stuff that everybody was talking about. We follow these people, we follow their families, and they're entertainers for first and foremost. But there's things that they have to address sometimes, and some do it way better than others. But I definitely think Kimmel, in terms of what he's been doing, has been doing a very stellar job.
Yeah. So our heart goes out to everybody at Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Yeah.
Let's make the pivot over to SNL season 51. So we've now just passed the second month of the season. And, I've been really in tune with the fans and what they're talking about. And I could say I've been covering the show for a few years now. Have never seen this many positive reviews on a season going back like 6 years, 7 years. It's been really, really crazy. I'm sure that everybody has a different opinion on the show, but I think that I keep seeing the word fresh being thrown around. And that's exactly what people said in the preseason, Mark, about, okay, Lauren was trying to refresh the show.
It's the writing. I really think that. They've talented people. The new people that they got is great. I just think that the shows have been, at least the last three shows have been very strong with the writing. I think I love that enthusiasm. I think they're doing a great job. I'm excited for the next three hosts. They've been booking it well. I love because they're obviously obsessed. That it has to. Tom Davis, the late Tom Davis, great SNL writer, said the show always has to say young with the cast and the host for the most part. But when they bring in someone like Cher with Ariana Grande, I think that's wonderful when they do that. Stevie Nicks, when they actually do bring somebody back that iconic. So I'm excited, but it definitely feels like, because last season was more about the 50th and just all the festivities, but I really feel like that they're getting in a groove, and I think the new people are working out very well.
I think the hosts have been a little hit and miss. For reasons I can't explain, I thought Nikki Glaser was not very good.
Really?
I thought her monologue wasn't very good, and I didn't think, and they had a whole lot of mess ups in that show. Like, it wasn't the smoothest show, and she looked a little awkward to me, like she wasn't as relaxed. Whereas I thought the last one was really good. I thought they really.
Oh, Glenn Powell, was it Glenn Powell, right?
Yeah, I thought that.
Yeah, he was good. He was really good.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. And that's always been the case. Obviously, you don't know how the host is going to work. Sometimes they're just a sports guy and he's good. Like, you can't account for that. But I'm totally down with them completely getting the show younger and fresher. I think that's absolutely essential. It's always been essential. It's absolutely what you want to do. I think it takes a little time for the people to emerge, and I assume that that's going to be revelatory as it goes on. People are already now crazy about Ashley Padilla, and I don't think before the season people would have had would have been able to say her name very much. You know what I mean? She was not emerging. So I think that's a big factor. You develop someone and then all of a sudden people are talking about them. That's what's always happened on the show.
I thought Nikki Glaser, I personally really enjoyed her. I thought she was really strong in the pre-tapes. I will say, I talked to John yesterday just a little bit about this. I feel like probably the biggest hole in the show, or maybe that they still have to figure out, are the cold opens. I thought the mayoral debate with New York, and James Austin Johnson does an amazing Trump. I give that to him. It just seems that they've been a little lackluster and the cold open, and it's just I don't know. It reminds me a little bit of when Downey, who's brilliant, would write these cold opens that just would do okay, but they would just put them in just because it's topical and we want to be topical. But I don't know. I feel like that is probably the thing that that I would say maybe needs the most work.
I thought they did a Domingo cold open, right?
Yes, you love Domingo, Bill. Talk about your love for
Domingo. And so I thought, don't cold open with this. I mean, that's just. I mean,
that was for you, Bill.
That just was to me was a cop out. You know, like they could have used that anywhere in the show. Why did they make the cold open? Like it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that was rare that they usually go topical for whatever reason. I don't know what the numbers are on that cold open on YouTube, but
people tune in every night on Saturday night to think, what are they going to make the cold open? What's happened that they'll make the cold open? I think there's an expectation of that. I mean, I don't know how recent that is. If you go back, obviously the cold open had whatever they want to do, but I think they really have an expectation. And to do a recurring bit just felt a little like they didn't have something better.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like the last kind of cold opens have just been okay. And again, maybe the Trump thing is just so overdone.
That's the problem they have, Mark. Everything about Trump has been overdone. Everything, right?
Yes.
The whole universe, it's overdone.
Even when he's not in the cold open, you know he's going to slide in almost always. And I will say this, finally Lorne has given James Austin Johnson the football and let him do sketches and other than Trump throughout the show. And I like that a lot. And I'm glad that he's finally gotten that opportunity.
Yeah, about the cold opens this past month, I really liked the mayoral debate. I thought that it was really strong. I think it was maybe just like a little bit late. I wish they would have done that the previous episode. But I think the fact that they brought in Rami Youssef and Shane Gillis, like I felt like that was refreshing. I thought Shane Gillis, who very famously was an Almost cast member and has come back a couple times to host, he was just crushed it as Curtis Lewa. And I think he brought a lot of attention to the show.
That's great. That's absolutely true, Joe. But my reaction to that was, does someone in Cleveland get this? You know, like, does anybody, like, do they know who Curtis Lewa is? Like, he was really good as Curtis Lewa. But if you're not in the New York area, like, who is that guy? Like,
for sure. But the thing is that I believe this was the first time in the history of Saturday Night Live they've ever done a sketch on a New York mayoral debate. They've covered New York mayors before. New York mayors have hosted the show, but they've never done a full debate sketch.
Debate. Yeah, because they would do Giuliani cold opens with Nealon as Giuliani when he first got elected. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, they've never done it, and I think that the reason that they felt okay with it was because of the press that Mamdani was getting via Trump, right? Like via the fact that the White House was so focused on the New York election.
What was the cold open last show?
So this was Caroline Levitt opening up the press conference and you're getting asked questions about the Epstein files before that James's Trump came in.
Ashley.
Okay, to me, that the Epstein files were so much in the news that week. I thought they had to address it. And of course, it was all over the Weekend Update too. I mean, they just had so much material. That's when I feel like, and Lauren has said this, sometimes he doesn't have a choice. You know, he has to do it. And people expect it and he has to do it, whether or not they can execute it really, really well or not. I remember one night I was there, it was a debate, presidential debate week. And I went to the dress rehearsal, and the cold open was a bomb. It totally bombed. It was Obama against Romney, right? And they've never had a handle on Obama. Like, why? What's the funny thing about Obama? What is the thing we satirize about him? He's aloof. Like, how do you do that? And so it bombed. I mean, it really. And Downey was brought back to write it. Downey was brought back to write the thing, and they went through. I mean, they jumped through hoops like crazy and totally redid it, and it was passable by the time they did it. But and Lawrence said, "I have to do it. It's a debate thing that people think we are going to do it. I have to do it." And I think they are boxed in a little with that.
Well, I think that the secret sauce for these cold opens right now is that James helps a lot with the writing of these cold opens, in that he can riff as
Yeah,
Trump like crazy. It's like somebody who can freestyle rap. Like he could sit in an office with the head writers and just riff, and then they write around it. So
yeah,
for them, it becomes a little bit of a crutch, and I think it's like a fascinating talent, and I love to see it. However, they are very reliant on it. Now, what was fascinating about this past cold open that we saw was I felt like there was something meta that we were getting from Ashley Padilla opening up the show as Caroline Levitt, which was, let's give this rising star a political impression. Let's put her at the front of the show. The feature players, there's just as many of them as the repertory players. At this point, the categories are meaningless.
it's
Ashley
meaningless.
Padilla is leading the show in screen time.
Yeah.
Appearance is, it's crazy what she is doing in her second season. And Mark, I mean, we talked about this a bit last month, but just seeing, somebody as a face of a cast or the star of a show, it's happened many times in the past. We talk about people like Will Ferrell, Kristen Wiig, like those types of people who start to just become the front of the pack. Do you think this is good for the show, how well Ashley Padilla is doing right now?
I think it's great what they're doing now. I think I always resist what they do with Kristen Wiig and Kate McKinnon. And it's just that Will Ferrell, they take over the show. Other people, it's hard to get time. I think I like that you can tell that they're thrusting her in stuff, but I just don't want it to be over the top. And the writers feel like to get their sketches and they have to write for her. And I just feel like the writing, a lot of the time the writing goes down when they do that, but she's clearly somebody that they're pushing and it makes sense. I mean, she's really, really strong.
Yeah. Bill, does she remind you of anybody from SNL past?
Well, she's not as, her characters are not crazy kind of characters like McKinnon would do the woman in the bar, like Freely. She's not over the top like that. I think she's maybe Amy Poehler-ish, maybe, kind of. Range, very good range. Like can do a lot of characters without being, pigeonholed as a certain type of comic. So I'm sort of looking forward because I think she has, as you said, that was her first real impression, kind of. That she did, and I think that's going to be interesting to see what they do with her.
One person I want to mention who I thought was a grand slam was Marcelo doing Sebastian what's his last name? Maniscalco. I thought in terms of like just people's enthusiasm for that particular impression, because they don't do as many impressions as they did back in the day for a sketch. It just seemed the audience just loved that so much, and I think
that was really good, Mark, because Sebastian, he's not that well known that everyone would know who he is, but he's so outrageous and exaggerated.
The physical,
even if you didn't know who he was, that was very funny. But what was this thing about? It was a potential, some sort of pay for play thing.
I don't think that was a thing, honestly. I don't think that there was any like paid sponsorship for something like that. But can I tell you guys what I really loved about this impression? It's that it reminded me a lot of something that the show used to do, which was take an impression of a guy. Maybe you don't know him, or maybe you know the SNL version of the impression, and put him in a regular life, slice of life scene, and just watch this like out of box person in another situation. So in this case, we got Marcelo as Sebastian Maniscalco being invited to a bachelor party. So it was like, why is this person here? And then you can build the scene around it where you actually have personalities there. It reminded me a lot, Mark, of, I was going to say, Phil Donahue and Johnny Carson, where we had Daryl and Dana together, who are both retirees, and they're talking about going golfing. Like, that's the thing that SNL used to do instead of forcing these impressions into a parade sketch.
I like the fact that there was at least a premise that was grounded in some sort of reality too. I think that's important. Whenever they would do whatever the celebrity show would be, like the Al Pacino show or whatever. I mean, I just like that they have a scenario that's grounded in some sort of reality. But that's a good comparison with Carvey and Hammond back in the day. But I really, really like that they did this, and it was. To me, it was like I haven't seen this in a long time. It seems that's what that was the impression that I got from it.
I also think it was so funny that we'll see it again.
Yes, certainly possible. I know that Sebastian has come out and said that he wants to host the show, so we'll see.
Yes.
If anything.
The physical comedy that Marcelo did on that was like Dang. I mean, I already think with like Billy Madison and other things, and just from the enthusiasm of him that he's doing really well career wise. I think this solidified him really with the show.
It definitely, and I'll say that he's in a really interesting spot in this cast where two of his castmates, Devin Walker and Michael Longfellow, both not brought back to the show. He's the only one left from his rookie class. He's there at a point where there's no male cast members that are one season younger than him or seasons younger than him. So like he is at a spot right now where he's sort of between these younger featured players and these more veteran male cast members like Mikey and Andrew and James, where he could go either way. Like this is sort of like the make or break thing of like, does he elevate himself on the show as that further star? Clearly he had a successful season last year with all of the Domingo stuff, but this year, there was a shoe-in for him to have a great night with the Bad Bunny episode opening up the season. And since then it's been rather quiet until last week where we got something like this. And I think that perhaps this is a sign of things to come. So I'm excited for Marcelo.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah, so a lot to look forward to in season 51. Of course, we have 3 more episodes coming up in December with Melissa McCarthy returning to the show, and then Josh O'Connor for hosting for the first time. And then, as we mentioned, the Ariana Grande and Cher will be the Christmas episode of Saturday Night Live this season. So we'll talk all about that the next time we get together. Mark, I know that you recently had a couple of very fun stories that you want to tell us about from your book tour, was it?
Yeah, I was in Chicago, and I have to say, Dave Plyer in Chicago, WGN Radio, that the Museum of Broadcasting Communications, they have a late night exhibit, and it's phenomenal. I got to go over there, and they gave me the tour, and I got to speak. But Johnny Carson, Letterman, you have Robert Smigel, Triumph representing, and I know Smigel stopped by and was just in love with this exhibit. I mean, they had 90 days to put this thing together, and I was blown away. I mean, I know a lot about Carson, obviously, and I learned things from going there. The presentation, everything. If you are in Chicago, it's open for a long time. Please, I urge people to stop by. It was great, and they have stuff from Arsenio, from Dave Letterman. They really played well with homage, but definitely the Johnny Carson things that they had on display, and just the presentation was phenomenal. And that was one place that I highly recommend. The second one, Bill, I don't know if you've been there. This was very surreal for me. I was invited to go to I thought it was Norfolk, but they say Norfolk, Nebraska. And I got to be in Johnny Carson's boyhood home. And the kind owner had me, they have on the wall, they have people that, notable people from the comedy festival that have signed the wall, like the Smothers Brothers and Paul Reiser. They invited me to sign the wall, and I really appreciate it. But just to be there, though, they have the Elkhorn Valley Museum. They have everything. Johnny Carson donated all the costumes, letters, and I've never seen so much Carson stuff in person. It was phenomenal. I loved being there, and I really did get a sense of Johnny, of just being in that vibe of where Johnny grew up and just being the influence. It was a wonderful visit, both places. I really enjoyed.
What did you make of the house itself?
It was great. I mean, they definitely had to renovate a great deal of it, but there were certain things that still remained. I mean, famously, that Johnny Carson did the Johnny Goes Home in the early '80s, that special, and there were home movies of the home. But yeah, just to be in that space, and just for I got the nicest tour from the owner and showing me around, and where Catherine, the sister, bedroom was, and where Johnny and Dick were, and Homer and Ruth.
There are people living in the house?
Right now, no. Not that I know of. It's just a private, and they there's a big sign, Johnny Carson's boyhood home, and I think they did private tours occasionally, and I just loved being there. And I know Dick Cavett was stopped by a bunch of years ago, but I mean, for somebody that just spent so many years for Carson to never be there, and to be in Nebraska and just walk around town. And I can't tell you that when I spoke at the Elkhorn Valley, there were all these people that said I had Johnny's teacher, Faye Gordon. Famous when Faye Gordon turned 100, Johnny went back to Norfolk. I think it was in 1996, and he would talk about his teacher, Faye Gordon. It was one of the reasons in retirement Johnny did the American Teacher Awards, which they didn't think Johnny would ever come back to TV, but he really wanted to pay respect to his teacher, Faye Gordon. But there were all these people, older people, that said, if I had Faye Gordon, and just Johnny is a hero to so many people, but back there, I mean, oh my God, talk about iconic and giving back to the community.
Yeah.
It was really special, and I'm grateful I got to go there. They were very, very warm to me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those stories, Mark. We're also happy for you that you got to have those experiences. Why don't you tell everybody where they could check out the book?
Oh yes, Love Johnny Carson is available wherever you buy books. Amazon, Books a
Amazon.
Million,
Yeah.
Target, or Astoria Bookshop here in New York City has signed copies. And yeah, I'm still doing interviews and being interviewed on podcasts and radio talking about Carson. But I mean, as Bill and John, you both know, I mean, he's been gone off the air for 30 years, but people still to this day miss him. And with YouTube, it's like some of those clips are as funny as they were 30 years ago, and his legacy still lives on.
Yeah, that is
Indeed.
amazing. Mark, we also have a great interview coming up on Inside Late Night this week with Jonathan Groff. So that will be a great conversation. Looking forward to all the listeners checking that
Yeah,
one out. Anything you want to say
that was
about that?
fun. Yeah, oh man, as Conan's head writer, I mean, this is a personal just observation. I really feel that the strongest Conan, if you look at the body of work, was when Smigel was the head writer for the first couple of years, and Jonathan Groff. I think that he hired so many key people on Conan. We really pulled the curtain back on what was going on at the time with Conan. It was really when he was 9 months he was a writer before he was head writer, and stepping into a place where Conan was really figuring out the voice of who he was as a performer, and just hearing some of the stories about some Larry Sanders moments with some guests that very complicated issues that Jonathan was able to gracefully handle. And I mean, you know, people have been very nice. They're like, I can't believe you know so much. Your knowledge is kind of scary and stuff. But I'd known him since I was almost a teenager. I'd met him a bunch of times, and we were able to talk about those really some of his hires and the big milestones of Conan's show. And he was able to give things that, to me, details that I did not know. And I think anybody that's followed Conan's career, it was a really, really solid conversation with Jonathan Groff.
Conan is very big now.
Bill, it seems so big that the TBS years don't even exist in people's minds, I think, for somewhat. It feels like the
Yeah.
1230 show and then his podcast. I feel like it might take a couple more years for the TBS stuff to just kind of get more in rotation for people to recognize some of the bits that maybe went under. I mean, some of the remotes actually did very well. But in terms of his popularity, oh my goodness, holy Conan.
Seriously.
Exactly.
And Bill, you keep crushing it with all of your features that you have over at LateNighter. Is there anything there you would
Yes.
like to plug that you're working on?
Well, I'm going to write about Tom Freston, and I'm sort of working on an idea about how late night is now become a serial drama.
Okay. That's very true. That definitely
Yeah.
works and tracks for all the discussions we've been having here.
Yeah.
So thank you, Bill, and thank you, Mark, for joining us. And if you like everything you've been listening to here on the LateNighter Roundtable, let us know your thoughts. You can comment on our YouTube video or subscribe to the podcast, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, at the LateNighter Podcast Network to never miss anything we have going on, whether it's Inside Late Night with Mark Malkoff or LateNighter Roundtables. So on behalf of everyone here at LateNighter, my name is Jon Schneider, and we will see you next month. Have a good one.